to another press conference of the 55th Thessaloniki International Film Festival. We're very happy today to have with us Ms. Hana Sιγκούλα, to whom the festival pays a tribute this year. Welcome, Ms. Sιγκούλα. Festival Director Mr. Dimitri Ekivis will make a short introduction and then we can move on to questions.
Καλημέρα και από μένα, δεν θα πάρω πολύ από το χρόνο σας. Σήμερα είναι μια ιδιαίτερη μέρα για μας. Είναι μεγάλη χαρά και τιμή μας να υποδεχόμαστε στο φεστιβάλ την Χανα Σιγκούλα. Μια θρυλική παρουσία στον ευρωπαϊκό κινηματογράφο, μια εμβληματική καλλιτέχνηδα που άφησε εποχή στο σινεμά. Ενώ με το ιδιαίτερο ύφο της διαπρέπει και το τραγούδι. Η Χάνα Σιγκούλα, η αίρια του σπουδαίου σκηνοθέτη Ράινε Φασμπίντερ, με ερμηνείες που όμως έχουν καθυλώσει, είναι μια προσωπικότητα διαχρονικά γοητευτική. Αύριο το φεστιβάλ θα την τιμήσει με τον Χρυσό Αλέξανδρο για το σύνολο του έργου της. Και χαιρόμαστε ιδιαίτερα που είναι εδώ κοντά μας στη Θεσσαλονίκη. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Okay, I'm going to start with a couple of questions before we move on to the press's questions. I wanted to start with one of your most iconic roles, which was Maria Brown. And in the film The Marriage of Maria Brown, she says, "I am who I am." And I was wondering that she's a character that always seems to know who she is. And I was wondering whether you are like that too. Have you always...
I never quite know who I am. Because I think life has changed. So I even don't know, don't want to know who I am.
One thing we know you as an artist, and it's something like this you've been doing for many years now. And I was wondering whether there's something still that surprises you. Louder. Okay. Sorry. I was wondering if after so many years as an artist, if there's something that still surprises you in cinema or in art in general, if you prefer.
Of course, because I mean that's what I'm looking for. Because you need to be surprised in order to wake up from a state of half sleepiness that we usually are in, because it's more comfortable to live like that. So you get you don't spend so much energies all the time. But it also makes us sometimes not really be where we are. And when you're surprised, you sort of wonder, and the word wonder has the word wonder. It means like you see something about life which is wonderful. Must not always be la vie en rose. It must not always be beautiful, but I'm looking in life for always for some kind of miracle to happen. But I'm not asking for so much. I mean, I don't ask for somebody who is paralyzed to stand up and walk. Though I have been in a rolling chair already and I stood up. It was not from one moment to another, but I mean, this is also part. I think every disease or every kind of hard situation can be turned into something that gives you more strength after, more force. So that's what I'm looking for in life. I find it a lot in coincidence. I love coincidence. And it happens a lot to me because I'm very attentive to it. And then when something is like coincidence, then I go for it.
It reminds me of something that you say in one of your short films that are screening here at the end, Amende, where you say at one point that death gives life a meaning, and death gives life a meaning.
No, I say without death there would not be life.
Oh, okay, I totally.
No. It's a little bit of a difference, because what I'm saying is like, even by eating, we already have to put the end of something that was alive before. I mean, life is kind of nourishing itself by something that we have to eat. We are taking in. So this is something we don't feel so much anymore, because we don't have to kill in that sense. If we would have to kill, probably we would not eat a lot of things. Once I became a vegetarian because of that, because we were fishing and then we had to kill the fishes because they're still alive, and then I didn't like to eat them. So, but then it made me very isolated, because I love to eat and I love the taste of almost everything. And so I rather understood that this is the condition for living.
One of the, you had your autobiography come out last year, which is called Wake Up and Dream, and you yourself mentioned earlier about being in a half-asleep state. What has your relationship with your unconscious self taught you? How has it shaped your waking life or half-asleep life?
I had a lot of training in university, which means analysis and all this. But I felt always like this makes me into a being that is less complete than when I'm more attentive to my first impulses. So I look a lot for every gesture that wants to come out. Even when I first meet a person, the first words, the first exchange of regards, the first gestures you do, and also in playing a role. Before I find it the best guide, even before opening my mouth and saying some words, to let my body react, because the body the body comes out with some truth which knows a lot, and we are so used having an opinion about this and that, and I'm trying to sort of get around this, because very often I have to change my opinions, and I'm even glad about it when I feel like I was wrong, because it makes the world wider. You know that there is not right and wrong. It is right and it's all wrong. It is right and right and left, and behind and before, and all this. So, but the body and the unconscious is connected with where your real being is set. It means like it is not absolute truth either, but it is connected with really the instinct and the soul. And so I gladly trust those body manifestations and my unconscious information. And I also like to dream at night, because I find it so interesting what my subconscious wants to tell me by that. I take it like a message in a bottle.
Thank you very much. I reckon people are eager to ask Ms. Sιγκούλα their questions. So, do we have a first question? The mic here, please, to Lazar Christian.
Hi. Speaking of wonders, I'm wondering whether your years and your collaboration with Fassbinder, what you call it, a miracle or a wonder, and can you recall the first instance, the first encounter, and what was your first impression of him? And was it maybe a love at first sight?
Unfortunately, I cannot recall really the very first moment. I cannot recall. But I know one of the first reactions I had was like, this is a very special talent, but watch out not to get too dependent on him. That was my first, so I always kept this guy, and he had the same feeling with me. Like he wanted to get close, but he also wanted not too much of a closeness. Being afraid that maybe when this happens, we would get apart.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry, here.
Hi. I would like to ask you the following. German cinema is very alive, and how do you see the development of German cinema from, let's say, from the 70s till now? And are there certain movies you would like to have played in? Current German movies?
Of course there's difference because we are in very different times. When we are young, the horizons were very open and we were still needed, and we wanted to change the world. And now, I guess when you're young, your first preoccupation is, where is my place in this world? Will I be needed? Will I get work? Well, where can I fill in? Our first preoccupation was, what do we really feel like? What is the most strongest impulse? But maybe in the end this comes to the same, because when you know that you have, anyhow, I hear that like especially in this city, this is what they told me yesterday, there are 60% of youth that don't find employment. So when it comes to this state, then you cannot be so opportunistic anymore, because there is too little opportunities anyhow. So you have to probably go for what is the strongest wish in you, to at least not miss that in your life, and then you would have to find a creative way to make yourself needed. Meaning like to invent something. And so I think that our generation came out of the ruins of the country. We were like, but it was also like moral ruins. It was not just like everything was destroyed. For us children, we even liked to play in the ruins. It was not, we didn't feel tragedy. we children. But then, the more we knew about what happened and how it happened, the more we became really ashamed. And somehow we felt guilty, though we were not guilty. And so this was a state of revolution in us against everything that we were lacking trust for what the generation before were transmitting like values. And we were trying to invent something that would be not on hierarchy, that would start from zero, meaning like first comes being and then having. And you should be motivated by love and not by fight. So that was maybe some luxury criterions we had, but at the same time it was not. And I could imagine that maybe now that Greece has to rise also like a phoenix out of ashes somehow. And there has to be also some, we talk a lot about there are buildings that will be falling apart, and we have to sanieren, how do you call this? You have to sanitize, or you have to rebuild them, but not destroying everything. You should take what is valid, but like give it really some kind of sanity from inside too. And this also applies to mentality and all this state of values, because we are all individuals, but we are all sort of part of one body that is the country, then comes maybe Europe, then comes maybe the world, the human being. So we have to work on, I think we carry a lot of things in that sense. And what was the question? The differences. There are differences, but they are not so. I think that what has to come now, in Germany still it is a state of saturation. But I think it will not last so much more, because Germany is living on the production of things that the world doesn't need anymore. How needs so many cars? I mean, it has to be reduced, all this. So that means Germany will have to, it's producing stuff, maybe the economy which is based on really ecological way of creating energy, this has future. And weapons is horrible way of making money. The excuse is sort of that they say, well, if we don't do it, others will do it. But it's not an excuse. And to make money on the production of weapons is like making money on death, on hurting others. And so the richness of all those countries comes from that. Drugs, weapons, and cars or high-speed technologies. But also, our minds are already sick from being speeded up so much. We have to learn to be more quiet somehow. So I think that this saturation is not a sane state. It is something that will come apart. And the young generation now, the films are very much also about extreme right-wing extremes. Of course, the coming up of fascism in Germany is something that hurts even triple and is very alarming. But it happens all over the places. Europe is turning right-wing, and also look at Hungary and look at France that might become Le Pen now. So it is a general, it is like people, instead of wanting to find a way to doing it all together and find a way to add their forces, they want to come to, we can do it all by ourselves and we have to close down the former borders and all this. But this has no future. And in the films, the German films, the young German cinema is not occupied so much by aesthetics, which I think is okay. It's more, it is, but this is a worldwide thing. It's like documentary and fiction is trying to dissolve the borders. Because reality, in fact, is very interesting. Sometimes I find, I'm not sure that I could have written a book about a fantasy, but to write a book, for instance, about really happened in my life was to me very interesting. And if it was to me interesting, I think it is to others too, because life is interesting. I really see that. So it is, but it's a worldwide movement, I think. I don't know so much Greek films, but I saw one wonderful picture which was called An Abrupt Goodbye to My Father, by Penny. It is already, I think, 6 or 7 years old, but it was based. It was based on a real experience that she transformed. She took a boy instead of her as a girl and all this. But if she wouldn't have really had this experience, she couldn't have been so profoundly touching of the public. And so and in art, in video art, it is coming on even stronger.
Is there another question?
Γεια σας. Θα κάνω την ερώτηση στα ελληνικά. Δεν έχω διαβάσει τη βιογραφία σας, κυρία Σιγκούλα, οπότε επιτρέψτε μου την ερώτηση. Συνέβη κάτι στη ζωή σας που σας οδήγησε να δείτε τα πράγματα με αυτόν τον εσωτερικό τρόπο? Γιατί μιλάτε για πράγματα που συνήθως οι άνθρωποι δεν μιλάνε. Συνέβη κάτι, ήταν ένα γεγονός, ή πάντα είχατε αυτή την τάση να έχετε μια εσωτερική ματιά στα πράγματα?
I guess it's part of my temperament, because also when I was a child, I liked to be close to old people who were still very much vital and enjoyed life, and that made me feel like you can grow older, and it's not just all going down. Everything is just like going down and down, and then you die. So I guess since I was already a child, maybe it has, all the children have sort of this kind of things also when they like to be with their grandmothers. Because the old age and the child has something in common that you cannot you have to be satisfied also with what happens. It's no more about having a big plan, what you want to get, and all this. So I think I have been always interested in this very existential things that life is more interesting than plans, and then theories, and then philosophies. When you, I think that this is something that I have always somehow felt, and of course I must say that I was the only child of my parents, and when they grew old, my mother sort of became very helpless, and I took care of her, and then I accompanied my father too. So I gave half of my time for 20 years, which is a very long time, to those to bring life to a good end of them. I could do it because our generation, which was the generation after war, I observed this with many of my age, have not given birth so much. I think it was a basic lack of trust in society, in life, in all this, because we're coming out of all this Nazi catastrophe. And so, for instance, my parents were part of, in the family of my mother there were 13 children, in the family of my father there were 11 children, and then I came, I was the only child, and I already had no more child. So it was some kind of decline on a very normal way of taking life. You grow up, you have children, and then you give everything you want to have your children to live a better life than you. This is a normal mechanism. But we were sort of, there was some historical earthquake that has been sort of making explode all this fundament. So this was a very biological consequence that happened. And our generation was, there was very little birth giving. And maybe this was also part of why our generation also was the generation that was trained to be very critical about everything, not to believe what they are telling you, always to look what is behind. We were believing also in life, money cannot be all. It cannot be that everything what we're living is manipulated by the big money behind, so we have to sort of try to do something about it. We could not. It's still the same thing. But I mean, all these things were happening in very early age, and it was part of the revolution, of the cultural revolution of that time. 68. It was something that was happening not only in Germany, it was happening in France, was happening in California, in Berkeley, it was happening also in New York, and it was happening also in Greece. There was also a very strong movement in Greece at that time. It was happening, it was all over the places, like the world after 2 world wars was understanding that we cannot go on in this way. And yet, they went on. But there was some kind of readiness for new criteria. And so I feel like part of this too. But then I felt like being too critical about everything is not the way either. Because it always puts you into suspicion, looking for what is the motivation behind. It makes you maybe very, gives you a knowledge about a lot of things, but it doesn't help to enjoy life at all. And so came the other movement, like wanting to, first of all, work on yourself. You have to, if you want to change the world, start with yourself. This was then what I tried at least, and lots of people around me tried too, because at least you know you are the one who's got it in his hands. You don't have to wait for other people to do it for you. It's you. So maybe, does this answer a bit your question? I don't know.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. We have another press conference coming up, so I'd like to thank Ms. Sιγκούλα for being here, and of course you for being here. And thank you.
Thank you.